It's looking good there. No, it's recording.
Yeah, it's just not going. It's not live streaming.
Okay, as long as it's recording.
And it's not saving to a SIM card either. It just
it's recording, just not recording.
Really not cooperating. Micro SD card is full, unable to record backup file. This is what happens when you put me in charge of technology.
One of those middle schoolers
Is there a phone we could do for just for open session?
Just set up a phone to record?
Just use your phone. Just do a
recording?
A recording. And we can upload that. I don't know if you have enough space on
You
the
might
phone
be able
for
to
that.
just use that mini to record it. You know what I mean?
That
That's
pink
what took the
iPad?
power. Yeah, the pink iPad.
Okay. Let's find out.
You know, use the camera. Yeah.
Pretty inept with this.
YouTube terms of service. How would figure that out?
Good?
Frank's not in the picture.
Hold back.
I'm on the edge.
No one's sitting at this table, so we'll take.
Okay, stop.
Guys are good.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Scott. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:08 p.m. on February 24th. Let us start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As a citizen of the world, I will follow Goethe's circle of learning. Curiosity opens my mind, ideas lead to knowledge, responsible choices show respect, cooperation strengthens others, learners are courageous, empathy creates communities. Als een burger dieser Welt, vogel ist des Geistes Lehrers, neugierig, idealisch, respectful, cooperative, mutig, empathic. Can't do without the motions.
Thank you, Kathy. Right. Frank?
Present.
Pete is absent. Danielle is absent. Beacon?
Present.
And we have quorum. Like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to append the agenda to possibly, if it's okay with everyone, to remove the board development since we have only 3 members here tonight. If that's okay.
Table that.
To table that. All, does anyone want to discuss or?
No discussion.
All in favor?
I move to approve the agenda
With tabling. the
with
board
tabling the board.
Second.
A second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Abstain or no? Okay. Do you want to go into discussion or?
No.
Okay. All right. Chris, student spotlight.
I will turn it over to Scott, who is going to tell us a little bit about what's been going on with 6th grade. As you guys are aware, Scott is the school administrator. We've had a busy time of late. We just spent last week talking with our fifth grade parents, and we have a good group, pretty large group in the morning, and a not so large group in the evening. So we've got to learn which times work best. But we wanted to give both opportunities to make it easier for folks. And I feel like we're getting some good word of mouth about the program itself in sixth grade currently, as well as interest from folks within our fifth grade right now. And so, Scott, you want to give us a little update?
Sure. We invited some sixth grade students to come this evening, but they're busy working on projects in the alumni program, and it's a really long day for them. So I'll share with you some of their voices via video, and just give you an overview of a few things that have been going on in the middle years program. All of our kids have a Chromebook. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. They do a lot of work collaboratively on Google Docs. They do a lot of their own research, starting with their inquiry, coming up with their own strategies, creating something, and then evaluating. A lot of group work. And then we've been working with some specialists, which I'll talk about in a moment. This is our current middle years team. So Chris and I and Angel as the leaders. Miss Pham, our core teacher, has been wonderful. Really, really great. And then we have Senora Kohad teaching Spanish. And what we've done is taken a Spanish 1 course, and which you would typically take in 9th grade year of high school, and spread it out over 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So by the time students get to high school, they should be prepared to enter a higher level Spanish. Frau Kasai will be our visual arts teacher and our exploratory wheel. And then of course we have Coach Washington as the PE and health teacher. And then we worked with 2 outside vendors, Code Rev for our digital design. The kids, the first quarter of exploratory, which we would call electives. We're doing coding, JavaScript, HTML, animations, things I'll never be able to do. And then I'll highlight some of the work that our kids have been doing with PS Arts for their performing theater arts. So our goals with this program are to really build a small school that meets the needs of each student. Sometimes students go to a large middle school and they get lost, especially the smart, quiet ones who don't open their mouths much. And we want to make sure that our kids' needs are being met individually. Continue to educate our diverse community of learners. Just within 6th grade, we have kids who speak 5 or 6 different languages from many different countries. Maintain our holistic and global approach, and then of course infuse those 21st century college and career readiness skills. In the middle years program, there are 8 different subject areas. So there's language and literature, which is English, individuals and societies, which is social sciences, math, science, PE, and health, arts, design, and language acquisition. And what we've added that's unique is an advisory and mindfulness program. So the purpose of advisory is twofold. It's to help students become organized. It's to help them transition into middle school, which is quite different than elementary school, but it's also been serving as a sort of targeted intervention period where kids can get caught up on work, where the teacher can give them one-on-one attention as they need it. And mindfulness is just a period where they take a few moments away from the rigors of 6th grade. They learn to be self-aware and self-reflective, and calm their bodies and minds.
Similar to how we started.
Physical and health education. Health is, we're talking about all kinds of health, digital health. I mean,
It's more physiological health,
physiological.
but they're not just out there playing individual and group sports.
Right.
They're actually looking more at the dynamics of individual and group sports, doing some research on it, writing papers on it, learning some anatomy and physiology. So it's a little bit deeper dive into what it means to be active and healthy. Nutrition is a part of it.
Where do we do the stuff, which is, under advisory and mindfulness? Are we planning to do something about digital health, what it means to be a digital, like fact checking, all these kind of things? Where do we do these things? Where do we do sex ed?
So advisory is a huge part of that.
Right.
Actually, tomorrow we are bringing an expert to come do 2 assemblies, one with 3rd and 4th grade, one with 5th and 6th, on digital safety, internet awareness. And then we have the community university tomorrow evening, where parents can come and learn about the same. We've realized I've spent a lot of time this year realizing how much technology is a part of our kids' lives and how pervasive it is and how it affects them inside and outside of school. So it is a big part of, and when they're using the computers too, it's teaching them how to be digital citizens and responsible.
So I went to an event recently at UCLA about digital citizenship. It was put up by Geffen Academy. And they talked about it was holistic. They wrapped it into their overall wellness program they do, right? I think we should have something similar where we talk a little bit about what it means to be living in this fast-moving world. Communication, all kinds of things. It goes in various layers. We should have something about which goes into health, mindfulness, advisory, like a package which helps us to market it. Yeah, if we can. There are some ideas out there. Mathematics, what are we doing in mathematics and what is the curriculum there?
Would you like me to show you?
No, it's just like, not what does it show like, it's Common Core.
So there's standard Common Core state standards. So there are
Right.
certain subject area, content area and skills that kids need to learn.
Right.
But the way in which they learn is through the framework of IB.
Right.
So the approach to learning is more of a discovery approach instead of a didactic approach where the teacher would be talking at them and having them do rote practice. And it's a lot of application, so taking those math skills, and I can give you one example from a few weeks ago where they were balancing a budget and balancing a checkbook, and so they chose their job, their dream job, looked at the income, looked at the taxes, after that calculated their basic needs per month, decided how much money has to go towards rent, water, etc., and then they were all shocked to find out they had nothing left over for fun. So that was the teacher's way of incorporating decimals, fractions, a bunch of different content area knowledge and skills into a cool real-world activity. Right now, the students are taking a design class with Ms. Trong, who's our IB coordinator. And the design class is another practical course where students look at real-world problems, come up with ideas to solve them, and then work as a group to create a product to solve that problem in their community. Just started this last week, so they're pretty into it. Using their hands, building. They just finished their theater arts exploratory unit, which was wonderful. And if you were at the winter concert, they put on a wonderful performance where they wanted to do something different and create a new tradition. So instead of singing a couple songs, they did an original, I think it was, what's the name? Frozen themed? And their goal was to show how different cultures around the world celebrate the holidays or this time of year. And that video, I can share it with you. The other Friday was the culmination of their theater arts unit, and they created an original show in which every aspect of theater that they learned was put into place. So there was a producer, there was a sound lady, there was everything you could think of, a prop person, and they performed for their parents, they performed for some of the 5th graders, and
organization, and it serves public schools in the
I'll show you a little
area,
bit of that
and
video.
it provides arts education, meaning drama, dance, music, and visual arts.
So the narrative was that there's the R&B show. Some students wrote commercials, some students were guests on the show, and they all used their skills that they'd learned throughout the unit in different ways.
Welcome to the R&B show. With Raquel and Brian, thank you for tuning in with us today. It's a very special day. Do you know why? Why? Because there's love in the air today. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It's that time again. Happy Valentine's Day. Now, I know you're not a big fan of D-Day. I know. I have to find someone to love. Well, not exactly. You just need to show your love with someone or something. Like your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your dog, anyone. So you're telling me it doesn't have to be a woman? It's really simple. Would you be my Valentine? Okay, sure. Oh, don't you feel the love in the
all of this was original. They wrote it in groups. And there was a variety of different performances. I'll give you one more example of it.
Hello, are you tired of those steaks from last night's fast food run? Yes! Well, we get served there in ladder set detergent. What's that? It's the new Royal Soft Clean. This makes your clothes royal clean. Not baby clean, but royal clean. Oh! This detergent is perfection. It makes your clothes softer and cleaner. My God, what valuable detergent. Yes, this product is very valuable, especially with that nice lavender smell. Surfer proves. Yes, gigantic approve. And remember, Surfer always approve. Sure.
They really took to this unit and were able to show their personalities. As I said, the students weren't able to show up tonight because they're busy, but I'll play you, for sake of time, an interview and hear their voices. This is Brian.
My name is Brian.
How many years have you been a student in Kirk?
Just
What is your favorite part of 6th grade?
my favorite part of 6th grade is INS, because you get to write essays and learn about history and also PE.
What's the coolest thing you've learned so far in 6th grade?
The coolest thing I've learned so far about Hammurabi, this ancient ruler from Mesopotamia, and got to decide if he was bad or good.
What do you think is special about 6th grade in Crypto?
What's special is that it's only 20 of us, so you're more special. And yeah.
What advice would you give to a current 5th grade student who's considering attending Goethe for 6th grade next year?
I would say you should stay because it's better in terms of like you get all your grades in like a normal middle school. Then the teachers also, when you have too many students, you don't care about what they do and you just make them do work, but our teachers make things fun for us.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us about your middle school experience in 6th grade here so far?
Yeah, the field trips. I like the field trips because, well, the field trip to the California side because it's fun and tied in with what we were learning in science, which is positive and negative energy. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So our kids in 6th grade have been doing really well. They're a really small cohort of 20 and they're really close, inseparable, maybe not by choice. But they're doing a really good job working together and they're learning and they're thriving. And what, like Chris mentioned, what we've done for our current 5th graders is give them an opportunity to explore 6th grade a little bit. So we've held our parent nights. We did a 6th grade experience where 5th graders spent an hour with the 6th grade teacher and did the Hammurabi lesson because everyone seemed to like that so much. And then we're going to start our shadow morning. So I have a list of about 12 5th graders who want to spend a morning in 6th grade and just see what it's like. We also do our monthly NYP newsletter, so you can kind of keep track of what's going on. And if you have questions, you can ask.
That's really good. Thank you. Scott.
Mm-hmm.
All right, at this time, we're open to public comments. Are there any?
I actually signed up.
Oh,
Because I'm the person that comes. Kathy Cheatham, teacher.
Pleasure to be here.
Nice to meet you guys. I just wanted to tell the board thank you for the past year and the improvement and the upswing that has happened and the positiveness that we are feeling as a community from you guys. I know it's a lot of effort, and it's just nice to see this dynamic now happening, and it's very much appreciated. And the other thing I'd like to say is, even though it got pushed off a little bit, I was excited to see that the board expansion. I was very excited to see that starting to happen. As much as it's a lot of work, I'm sure, to be on a board, and I think that the more we can get more community members involved with us, the more people realize it's not just a parent community that's excited about Goethe, but a community as a whole. And I'm very excited to see that process and see the board get even bigger. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Moving on to consent. Approval of the regular board meetings from January 27th, 2020.
I move.
All in favor? Aye. All right. Approval of the special board meeting minutes from February 7th, 2020.
I move.
All in favor? Aye. That's
Who was our second
unanimous.
on that?
No second.
You don't need a second for consent, but
There we go.
thank you. All right, Chris, I'll pull up the ED report. This may not work because I might have left it on last time, so might be out of juice. But
That's okay, I was only a couple
I just
slides.
need to find
You
the
can
source
do it.
again.
oh, sure, yeah,
Yeah,
go
it's
for it.
off, so
No,
I
that's fine.
Source. There you go. Thank you.
No?
There we go.
Nice.
Thank you.
Okay, as usual, we've been starting off with enrollment. And I'm happy to say that across the year, enrollment has stayed very, very steady. We've dropped a couple of spots, and the reason for those drops have been people moving. We've had people moving far away as Rialto, which was a big group of family of four that sadly left us. But we've had some who moved to Palos Verdes, some to different places that it just wasn't able to move. So we are down at 416. We were at 415 for a moment. We did add another student. So 416 is where we're at currently with regard to our enrollment. But it has stayed pretty stable throughout the year. Wanted to share once again, as I have been each month, where we stand with regard to fundraising. We're actually very pleased with how things are continuing to come in. We are currently at 71% to our goal, which we have down as 520,000. In budget is 500,000, so it's a little above budget, what we're shooting for. That actual to date is 369,777. This is everything that we have pushed from our end towards XED, but some of this may not be in the January numbers that you see, but we want to give you as up to date as possible that is here in the monthly update. Frank, you had asked specifically that the pledged amount be listed under annual giving, so that number is 214. But we're marking the actual to date, which is 191,625 on the annual giving. That has continued to climb and grow. And then, of course, coupled with that down at the bottom is matching donations, which we had only estimated at 20,000, but it's already at 27.2, and we expect that to continue to grow as the year goes on. So I think we are going to meet and perhaps exceed our annual giving campaign when we put those two together, which is what we had originally set for that 220,000. As
we mentioned before, had a really good job on that came in, and the one that has the things that have not come in yet, the gala. But I do want you to know that we have we were just under $16,000 in sponsorships, so that's not showing here, but that's going to basically we feel sponsorships are going to be able to cover our full cost. So that's great news because it means there's no risk in everything we do for the gala. Things are moving forward greatly with that. But so much has been done in the last couple of weeks, and it's really everything's taking shape. So we're excited about that, and we'll see that coming in the next few months where that gets added and completed. The actual to date on grants, which we did mark at 140,000 as our goal. We're at 50,000 that's been collected so far, and the two main grants are the PCSGP expansion grant that we received, and we also received from the German consulate, and so that's another that is a part of that. We do have one that we have applied for and are expecting that is not in here, and that is a $48,600 that is the second part of the PCSGP grant that would be coming in. So you can see in some of the other areas we're actually looking to go over in our Eden Shop for Goethe area. We're looking to go over our goal in other fundraising fairly significantly because we included our direct ask for field trips. It was kind of our replacement for Goethe cafes that's in there. So we are feeling pretty confident of where things are going and the direction we're at for this time of the year. And any questions on fundraising? I'm going to move forward to outreach. So we've been doing a lot of work online with regards to our outreach, and one of the pieces, obviously when people are searching, one of the places, the major place that they're searching is on Google, and so we claimed our Google Business account, which had never been claimed before, and it does not cost us any money, but allowed us to kind of clean up, especially like the initial pictures that were totally random before, and they weren't the kind of pictures we would want. They were like stray shots of outside the campus that had somehow been connected to our account, and so we were able to get that taken care of. We have held our onboarding meeting with niche marketing, and that, as I mentioned last month, that is something that I think is really going to move the needle for us with regard to getting people, building our awareness online and targeting an audience online. And so we were able to do that. I also had one of our community members and original stakeholders in the marketing team, and that was Thor Rhodes, who joined and was really instrumental in kind of talking through some of the details, especially as we were drawing a lot of the information from Google Analytics, which we also signed up for the first time and got it connected with our website. So we're now able to track what's happening on our website, coordinate that with Niche's website, which also coordinates with Instagram and also coordinates with Facebook and all the other pieces that we have. So the last thing is we're developing a dashboard for social media metrics and analysis. So this won't be useful today, it won't be useful in a month, but it will be useful in 6 months, and especially a year from now, when we're able to look year after year in such a cyclical type of environment that we have at schools. We'll be able to see, are we growing and putting our name out there. So this is really, I think a key turning point for us is what's happening with outreach and online.
So I'm sorry, before we move on to
Sure.
from outreach, I was on the niche website and I had seen a few reviews from parents, positive, for a month or weeks ago. I think it was a handful of 4 or 5. Do you intend to do? I know last year you sent out a notice to parents to write reviews about the school. Are you going to do one of those again this year?
Absolutely.
And when is that?
Probably within the next few weeks. It'll be kind of an ongoing thing. The one that we sent out earlier included niche. It also included great schools. It also
You sent one out earlier this year?
We sent one out earlier this year, but it had 3 target groups, and so we're going to probably focus on one of them. So niche, we did gain a few that came in, and this is one of the ways in which we can even improve our profile with them. They have their own algorithm. We can't control how they rate the school, but we can, the more input we give and the more people who fill out polls and the more people who give reviews, that all gets calculated in. So it's really important. Yes, we're moving forward with that.
Okay, our favorite topic, Prop 39. Just know that we are working on our response to the preliminary proposal for 2020-21 that'll be due by March 1st, so we will be finalizing that, and there'll be a discussion we'll be having later, probably in closed session. We will, but that will be due and coming out March 1st. We attended an issues conference with LA Unified and their legal team, both their in-house legal team and their outside counsel, that occurred 2 weeks ago, and this is regarding over-allocation penalties. If you recall, we discussed that they had brought forth dispute resolution process against us, and so this issues request was a part of that process. They did, after that, issue kind of the next step, which is a mediation request from LAUSD to us. So this is steps that are on the or could be on the way to litigation, and we have been giving our reasoning as to why we do not think these penalties are accurate, that they are excessive and were not put forth correctly. And to get that side of the argument out there, we are participating in a media campaign that kicked off last week. It is called Side by Side. The only side is the student side. And it is developed through a combination of 34 charter schools that are affected by these penalties from LA Unified. We are organizing it through the California Charter School Association, and we are also, and it's organized through Larson Communications. I've been involved with the group as they've been developing this strategy and this campaign, and I think that the work is high quality and it represents our beliefs, but it presents it more globally from charter schools in general and the charter schools affected by penalties in particular. This is a really important time. You're going to be seeing some more things that get pushed out through GICS communications, where we're asking, we're pushing out in social media, and we're going to ask some of our key stakeholders to also push out in social media, so that will be coming. But this is really an important crunch time with regard to getting our message out and changing the narrative from what
USD is putting upon us to how we are reacting and responding to that, and our message is getting to get out there. The website is available. Look up side by side on Google, and you'll find it. And then any questions about any of that? If not, I will push through to our final area, which is student achievement. Last month, we had an update from Casey with regards to Galileo testing, and we were in the midst of actual testing when we were doing that, and we have some results to share with you today. If you want to go ahead and change over, it's also in the Dropbox.
You cannot see this? This is posted? Oh,
Not at the Dropbox.
it's not. I didn't see it either.
It's not good. Let me see if I can put it in real quick.
No, it's not. It's not in there. No, it should have been there, but it isn't. I have it up here.
It was in earlier.
I looked at it.
On
It's
Friday
definitely
morning.
not in there for sure.
What did you get?
I looked at the entire set.
Oh, no, I know.
No,
You
no,
don't, it's not there. That's what
It's
you're
not
saying.
there. That's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
I'm trying to
that's-
say.
yeah,
You don't have to look for it.
Yeah, yeah.
At least.
So,
Are you gonna move it in there right now?
yes. Just a second.
Can I close the doors?
Yeah, absolutely. You're cold?
I can do it.
This moment was designed for donuts.
I had one already.
I'm the only person that feels this. I swear to God. Because I haven't felt it.
Put it in there? Yep. My apologies.
Not
I love this one's
Yeah, so as Chris said, we were in the middle of our second round of testing at the last meeting. So this will be the assessment data from the January assessment that our students just
Clicker.
So I have I've added some different graphs in here to kind of show a little bit more information, or to hopefully share the information more clearly. We had a great discussion at our school site council meeting last week, where we went through and talked about the data, and the questions that came up in that helped me kind of refine how we want to show this for you guys. So what is new is I've added in here now the class average for the percentage correct. So this isn't the total number of students who got meeting or exceeding standards, but just the average score of each class. So in October, that's that orange line, and then January is the yellow line. So what is great is that this shows us that overall our average for each class, for most of them, we saw an increase for the English language arts assessments that were done. You can see in 5th grade, we had a slight decrease there, and then 6th grade stayed at the same exact percentage. What's really useful about this is when we look at the overall growth, you'll see that we've got a difference of just a few percentage points for each of the grade levels overall, and this is for the total number of students who are meeting or exceeding standards. But these changes are all the result of just 1 or 2 students changing a band of where they are. So to go, like our 2nd grade, to go from 56 to 59, that was 1 student bumped up into the meeting or exceeding range from the previous assessment. And then in first grade, the 63 down to 60, that was one student who was in that median exceeding range, fell below that, which overall seems like, okay, we're not really doing a huge growth here. But what's really great, and the same is similar with our student groups, it's staying about the same. But what's really great about the Galileo data is when we look at the individual class numbers, and I have a slide later on to show you what the teachers see. When I was going through all of this information, and what the teachers get to look at is they get to see each student, how they did on the first test versus the second test. So even though we're not seeing a huge jump from October to January, what we're seeing in the individual student results is that students are making those gains. It just maybe wasn't enough to get them from that not meeting or nearly up to meeting or above.
Is it the same test?
Same concepts that are covered, different questions to find out if students have mastered that. So that is the test in language arts.
Are we measuring the same, are the questions more difficult or the same
No,
level?
so same level of difficulty, same contents that students are being asked about, but the specific questions being asked are slightly different. That's for English language arts.
Okay.
Math is a little bit different because
Got it.
we've paced it out by the concepts that they've been taught so far. So looking at our student groups, again, no huge jumps from October to January when we look at that baseline of are they meeting and above or are they approaching and below where we would want them to be for English language arts.
Okay, hold on 1 second here.
Yeah.
So isn't there like isn't there a way that you can show a weighted average? You know, I mean, you know, because you have only 37, you know, isn't there a way to normalize it?
Well, but this, so what came out at School Site Council is this isn't really useful data to talk about how our kids are doing and what we're going to do with them. What is really useful is the reports that teachers run, which I don't share at School Site Council because they're connected to students, and which also I won't share in a public meeting because they're attached to students. But so there are multiple reports they can run, but I pulled examples of two that are kind of the most useful for our teachers and the ones that they refer back to most frequently. One is the intervention alert. So what this does is for your test, you can say whether you want to look at one class or whether you want to look at the grade level. And you select the test you want to look at, and then it gives you a list of all the standards that were covered on that assessment. So here we'd have all, this is just a snapshot, so these are the reading standards for, this is the 5th grade assessment. And then the key up at the top gives you a color-coded view of which standards you have 75% of your students or more have mastered based on this test alone. Green is that if you're under that 75, and then it highlights in yellow and red the ones that you had most of your class did not get. So what's great for this is it lets teachers see really quickly a snapshot of, okay, we're greens and blues, we're doing great, I just have to go through and check on individual kids. Or if I've got reds and yellows in an area, I have to go back and do a completely retaught lesson for these concepts because they just didn't get it yet. So this one's really useful for our teachers in terms of their planning for what they do whole class versus small group. And then the really great and useful information, and one of our teachers was so excited because for this data, they can run it as soon as the test is done. They don't have to wait for Galileo to aggregate the data and send it back to us. So one of our teachers, Friday afternoon, had finished taking the test, looked at the results, and was so excited because she said the change in her kids from October to January was huge. So we can see this is just math. This is for a 5th grade class. I blocked out the student name, so that's all just white on the end, but each row correlates to one student. So if I was that first student, on the first test, I only got 50% right, but then on the second test, I bumped up to 58%. So what this lets our students see, or our teachers see, is like this student had a huge gain from the first test to the last one.
And that's a subject area?
This is for math.
Yeah, but like what? For these are individual questions around the same subject matter.
This is for like if everyone took the same test in October and then we took all the same test in
if this is one
January.
student.
No, this is a list. Like if Think about on
okay.
this side, it's
Oh.
Casey, Scott, Beacon, like it's all of our students.
Okay.
So
You took out the names, obviously.
yeah, I
No,
blocked
no,
those
no,
out.
I got it. Yeah, so I was confused.
So you can see like with this student, they had an increase from 50 to 58, so they're making progress. They're still in that nearly or not met standard, so that's not going to affect the overall score, but the teachers can see, okay, they're making progress, we still have a lot of work to do, but I can see growth. One example, we had a student where I noticed on their test that for both language arts and math, they had decreased from the October to the January. But knowing what was happening with that student at that time in January, it's not a surprise to me that their scores would have gone down. There were other things going on, and the teachers and the families all know about it. So what this information, and this is kind of the most commonly used data from Galileo that our teachers access regularly, is it helps you really see a clear picture of which kids are really making lots of growth, which kids are maintaining where they are, which kids really haven't, or was something going on and they had a decrease, they didn't do as well. What is it that you need to do to get in there? So this one and this report are the ones that our teachers are accessing and looking at frequently.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Going back to that previous slide, I agree with you. This seems much more powerful than the other piece of information.
Yeah.
More so because it is more granular. I think it also would provide context, which is good. But as a board member, I think for me it would be better to see the overall increase by grade. So, but as a parent, potential parent, this would be really beneficial for a parent, especially to evaluate their student compared to everyone else in the classroom. Is this something that can be shared with parents without the name, obviously?
It's
Individually.
individually. So it's our parents can ask to have this data.
Right.
But because of the math should be easier to understand because it's a snapshot of what they've already covered.
Right.
Language arts because it's that whole year. What we have our teachers do is talk with parents when they're sharing that information. So to just hand this over.
I'm not saying hand it over, but is
Yeah.
this something you guys share with parents? Like that with the names?
If requested, but not, we don't just always share this because again, this is for our teachers to monitor what they're doing in the class
Mhm.
and not so much to give an update of here's where your child is doing. What's more accurate for the parents for that understanding are the math topic tests, are their writing assessments that they're doing, the unit projects that they're working on. So those assessments are the ones that they're regularly seeing, and then all of the grades for that and other projects in Power School. But this one we historically have not shared because it's really just an internal assessment tool.
Chris, and maybe you know this too, schools, do they share metrics like this? Is this something that they release? Because I've seen always like bell curves and stuff like, hey, this is where your child is compared to
It totally
the city and the
varies from
state.
school to school.
Okay.
And also test to test. And so I know some of the vagaries around Galileo have been how we've been trying to dial in the math so that and this has been a year-long process that we're just coming out of. So it took a full year to get through the cycle, and now we're just coming out of it, which is good because moving forward we'll be able to have, we think it's pretty good information coming from math, whereas before it was really sketchy.
So I have seen other parents' website access where you can see where the individual tests are being listed, and you see bar charts.
For your other students.
No, just for your individual students, right? So where you can see, similar to Power School, when I look at the Power School, you have a percentage thing here, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it shows you, there are like so many math quizzes and tests during the year. They're all scheduled, there's a rubrics around it, right? And so then you can see the adherence of percentage for each individual test, and then you can toss one out and just sort of like there's all these mechanisms.
So my point about my question, and thank you, Frank, but more specifically, I'm talking about context, right? So let's imagine everything on test 1 is that score, and then on test 2, everyone had at least a 15% increase, right? What that would immediately tell me is that the core curriculum, something was changed, the teacher went back, taught some core concepts over and over, like really hammered it into them, right? Whereas if you then look at another snapshot and only 3 of the kids are at 5% increase and another 10 are at 30% increase, then that reasoning kind of becomes more vague. So I guess what I'm asking is, just like you said, this is valuable, and I know it's the first year you're going through this cycle. I think this board needs to become better at just monitoring the performance of students, but I think you should also consider some of these performance measures to communicate it to the parents so that they are clear that, hey, this is how my child is doing, and yeah, he improved vastly, but maybe 10 other kids improved twice as much, and then there might be additional
It
facets.
sounds to me like this is not the test where you do that though, this is for the teachers about their teaching, is
Yes.
that correct?
Yeah.
So there could be a different test that would be what you're saying?
Teacher for teaching, I'm sorry, we didn't teach
So
you.
this is more just for our teachers to understand, like, are we moving at the pace instructionally that we need to be for our kids to get to the end?
Yeah, that's fine, that's fine, yeah.
But then all the other assessments that we do are the ones that help parents see the growth and where their child is.
And that's fine, because I can see that from
Yeah.
an individual, but I'm talking about the context of the entire classroom and potentially the grade. That might be.
So, I mean, you have in your other slides, you see the meeting or exceeding the expectations on average by class, right?
Mhm.
The percentage. So the complement is not meeting or exceeding, right? And so the question is, if that is the baseline, so where is the baseline we want to see students? Is it, at any one point in time? Meeting and exceeding, what's the ratio? And what are we going to do? And I think you're going to address this individually with the teachers, right? What is with the students who are not meeting and exceeding? And what is our intervention protocol for those students to get up to speed? And is there anything we can do from the board level? I'm asking you this all the time. Do you need additional resources or anything in order for those students which are not meeting the baseline? What can we do as a board level to get those students up?
Yeah, so some of this data, along with all of the classroom assessment data that we do, is what we use to identify students to get the before and after school tutoring, which is being funded through the Low Performing Students Block Grant. So we have a second session of after school tutoring going on that now has slightly different students than the first session based on how they've done here. We could always use more. I mean, it would be lovely to have a reading specialist on staff. It would be lovely to have, but I think based on what we have and how we've restructured things in order to provide the before and after school tutoring, also our acquisition teachers have been pushed into different classrooms to help support. So Frau Meyer goes into the younger grades and really focuses a lot on the students who have been identified as needing more support in particular areas. And I actually just switched her schedule because after this first half of the year, the classes she's been in no longer need that support, and we have a new group of students who does need more attention and instructional support there. So we've kind of transitioned her into another classroom for that. So I think there's nothing additional. We just need to continue constantly looking at this data, talking with our teachers, identifying which are the students who need that help, and then moving our people around that way.
So and I know that other schools, is more about this different budget. In the independent space, they do have learning specialists on staff, right? Is there a need?
Always.
Of course
Yeah,
there is.
yeah.
But is there a need for, which we should be? I know we're tight on the budget, and I understand, and the program is comprehensive. But is there a need for any other specialists we need to bring in if we can cover it in-house? I mean, that's my question. Do you think in these ideas as okay, if in a perfect world, what do I need, right?
Yes. Yeah. But I think also that we offer a lot of other things that other schools don't, and so there's always going to be that balance of what is it that where are we sending the funds to go for this? So if we have adequate support to reach these kids with what we have now without having reading specialists or other instructional specialists on staff, because we want to have art for all of our kids. We want to have, you know, our PE coach here with us. That's kind of the trade-off. If, you know, those things aren't something that we value as a school any longer, and we really want to push all of our funds towards just purely the subject matter content, that, you know, that's a...
I don't want to belabor the issue,
Yeah.
but my final question is, I know we're doing this in the time of the school. I also know that we have spring break and all these other breaks. Is there something which we could offer on an incentive through teachers by putting a tutoring program together for maybe for kids who need it?
Like during the breaks?
During the breaks?
I think if one thing that always comes up from families is, do we have a summer school program? We don't have space in the summer, so no, we don't have that. That's a long break for our families. I don't think realistically our staff would.
They need the break, I get it.
They need the break in between. I
Yeah.
think summer is something to consider,
But maybe
there are other issues that come up with
maybe
that.
our support, IAs, you know, would be willing to make an extra buck, you know, and just offer something. I mean, we potentially could rent a space, you know, if there's enough involved. I'm just, you know, just to bring these kids, to give them another opportunity to learn, especially also for summer school. I know it's a critical item. It's a long time. Just food for thought.
I'll just really quickly go through the math stuff then. So our class averages for math, we actually saw, even though math has been overarchingly an area that we've really been concerned about in terms of student performance, in comparison with the language arts, more of our classes actually had an improvement from October to January in the math. And I think, like in 5th grade especially, those teachers after the October administration really have been using the Galileo system extensively to do check-ins on their students. So they'll do a topic test. If there's a group of kids who really did not do well on that topic test or Envision, the teachers have created, here are the main concepts, let's put together a little quiz. They do a reteaching and they have the kids do a retest through Galileo, and so they're able to see, okay, are we able to do this? Yeah.
Sorry, another question. I'm looking at the data. I'm just looking at the graph. Why is there a dip in between from the 2s to the 4s? When the 1s and the 5s are significantly higher when meeting the next season. What's going on there?
Couple different things.
Question.
Couple different things. So the transition from 1st grade to 2nd grade and into 3rd grade, the jump is a lot bigger. So in 1st grade, you're doing a lot of basic math skills. When you get into 2nd and 3rd grade, it becomes more complex. So that's kind of a bigger jump for our students to make from one grade to the next, just in general, based on the standards. But we also have, in 3rd grade, we have a new program, so kids are doing more transitions because they're used to all being together all day, and now they're being broken apart, and they have different teachers who are in and working with them. So the more cooks in the kitchen sometimes is really helpful, sometimes it can pose its own challenges. And then, like I said, our 5th grade team, we have veteran teachers there. 4th grade, we have veteran teachers there. 2nd and 3rd grade, we've had some veteran teachers, but kind of a mix of newer staff coming on in the last couple of years in 2nd and 3rd grade as well. So there are a lot of different factors that I believe are contributing to that. I wouldn't say I have like one thing.
So then if it's a multitude of factors, so is it then, you know, prudent for us to throw more money at the second or the transition periods? You know, from when the staff is ready, is there a need to ease these in order? If we go from 80 to 60.
Can we throw in?
No, I'm just looking at
First grade
this.
has AIDS. The kindergarten and 1st grade have AIDS. The moment you start losing AIDS, it's very difficult on teachers. At the board meeting over the summer, we decided to pull AIDS from 2nd grade. That's definitely
Could be.
reason.
So maybe that's something we could do in order to get this stuff.
But it also, when you look at this too, you have to think, where were those kids in 1st grade last year? So this group of
True
1st
that.
graders is not comparable to last year's group of 1st graders for a lot of different other reasons that I won't go into. So where they were starting 2nd grade, but what is nice to see is that same growth that you're seeing between those is still there. So we have a few classes where it hasn't, but they're still making that growth from the October to the January.
You know, I don't hate to be critical, but you could say that between second and fourth grade, there's really no development in transit. I mean, the rate's coming up, but there's really no really development to go back to 80. That doesn't even, you know, it spikes a little bit there in second grade, 2C. But, so I think there's something maybe, I'm just looking at the graph.
Yeah.
You know,
If I may, I think this data set is too small to make any kind of overarching.
Agreed.
You know what I mean? We need to see this year after year, and that would kind of shed a little bit more light, right?
But again, it's tracking the group of students, not the grade levels,
Yeah.
year to year.
So then again, with the percentage of students meeting or exceeding, there's just differences in one or two students, so just a few percentage points, but we didn't have a huge change from one benchmark assessment to the next for math, as we did the same in language arts. And then the same with our student groups. We had a huge jump from our Asian student group, but that was one student who went from nearly meeting to meeting expectations, because that's a very small set of just 14 students there. But as with language arts, our students with disabilities and our African American students are the student groups that we really want to look at and be giving more support to.
I apologize for this.
No.
No, these are the questions we
Yeah.
answered.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Casey. All right, Frank and Chris. Financials.
Yeah, we have January financials. Before we start this discussion, I move to endorse January financials.
I second.
So with that, we have the floor for Ryan.
To approve the January financials. How you doing, Ryan?
Well, thanks.
You're looking very good these days.
Feeling a lot healthier after my rest from being a little ill.
Yeah.
The last couple of
I
months.
thought you were gonna die last time we saw you.
Well, glad to be alive. So I'll get started. In front of you, you have our January financials. And to start, I'd like to just quickly go over enrollment. So with these financials, we have enrollment information as of month 5 attendance. And our month 5 numbers ended with 417 students enrolled. And one thing that I would like to point out is that our average daily attendance is still about 1 percentage point higher than the 96% that the board approved. That being said, average daily attendance for funding purposes, it's a running average. So we're forecasting our period 2 attendance to come in at about 97% because months 1 through 5 thus far have been closer to 97%, and the running average for P2 will be closer to 97%. That being said, each month for 6 through 10, we're still being very conservative in assuming that despite beating it every other month, that 6 through 10 will be at our board approved 96% each of the remaining months. Any questions? One other thing that I did just want to point out, because it's very helpful for board members and also board members that may not have been at the previous meeting, is that in that section of average daily attendance and enrollment, if there is a comparison of the previous month's financials. So at the previous month, where we had information through month 4, we had 421 students as of the last day of month 4. that's 4 students less for this report. So there is a financial impact. Just wanted to point that out to the board members.
So there's a Rialto family moved to Rialto, right?
I believe so. That's what I remember from the finance discussion. Rialto and I guess Palos Verdes also. Moving on to the income statement, because there's really not a whole lot of stuff that's been changing from month to month here. The school's been doing a really good job containing expenses and staying within budget. The one thing that I did want to lead into, because I brought it up about average daily attendance, is that when you look at our income statement versus today's presentation versus last month's, you'll see that revenue dropped by almost 19K. And that's tied to average daily, the ADA loss of those 4 students for the remaining months. Other than that, everything's been holding very, very constant. On the expense side, we are continuing to see and realize savings each month. A few $1,000s in certificated and classified, and we're also seeing savings in benefits. Rather than removing that, we're keeping the expense in there just in case something changes from now to the end of the year. But each month we have been realizing savings, so that's why our expenses are actually about $12,000 better than the previous months. Any questions? I would also just kind of step back as far as revenue goes, because Dr. Jones did have a slide related to fundraising, and he gave a fundraising update as of now. In this financial model, it is as of the close of January 31st. So you can see grants and fundraising actual year to date as of January 31st being $318,000, and as I heard, as of today we're about $362,000. So there's
362.
Is that what your slide said, Dr. Jones?
369.
369. I'm sorry. So just wanted to point that out. So this shows fundraising as of January 31st. It seems like more has come in, and we're realizing, we have our total for the year, but I just wanted to point that out. That actuals as of today is better. Any questions on the income statement? Okay. Cash at the end of January 31st, $1.2 million, and we're forecasting to end this fiscal year with $800,000 in the bank, and we are anticipating receivables of about $374,000, and that the majority of that funding comes in the summer months. We typically receive about 70 to 80% of that prior to the end of August. Any questions as of January? The last page in this packet, it's presented slightly different than previous months at the Finance Committee's request. So the check register is actually sorted this time by largest amount to smallest amount rather than just in sequential order by check issue. Just not to say that we shouldn't look at all of them, but just to point your eyes to the biggest ticket items first. I also added a column for notes because one of the checks that was issued to McGraw-Hill had the description of just tax. We didn't pay that much in just tax. It was multiple line items on that check register. On that check, but the register just showed tax. So the big purchase for that, and that's check number 2004447. It was a curriculum purchase for 6th grade. It's a student suite, and it has workbooks and different student curriculum in it. So it's not just taxes. Any questions?
This is a lot better, so thank you, Finance Committee.
one other thing that I just also wanted to point out about January is the month that LAUSD calls second interim, and this is the time where we have to report to them as how we're doing. So these financials, our net income, our cash, all of that, these go to LAUSD at this time of year in a different format. It's with the SACS reporting software. And it's actually, that report is in the board packet for you to review, and it's just these numbers in their format.
That's in your Dropbox.
That's in the Dropbox folder. And you're one of the lucky schools in the state of California to actually see this before handing it over to LAUSD, because LAUSD's timeline never allows for that. Almost never allows for that. And this, I think, is the first time in this school's history that we've actually been able to see it prior to clicking submit. It's not a requirement, but you know, it's nice to be able to review it first.
All right. If there are no more questions, and Ryan, you are done.
With this section, I think there's a couple more items on the agenda.
We talked financial report, analysis, income statement, balance sheet.
There's a winter consolidated application.
So we
Well,
can-
that's the second, that's the second.
Okay. Well, I mean, I wouldn't sit down.
Yeah, that's what I meant. All in favor to approve the financials for January 2020? Aye. All right.
I moved.
Yeah. You moved, I seconded. All right. Next.
So then, is the approval of the second interim report. I move.
I second.
Your floor.
Second interim report.
Yeah, so as I said, this is our report to LAUSD as to how the school's financial health is at this point in time. This report is our, this is their version of it. We use the state accounting code software that's like playing, like, you know, after your kids are done playing PlayStation, it's like going to Game Boy. It's really old software that has tons of glitches and issues with it, but nevertheless, this is the tool used to report the interims. And our numbers, if you want to tie them out with your dashboard that you have in front of you today, are actuals to date. Actuals to date, column C, and column D, that's our projected totals for the end of the year. You can tie these out. So actuals to date on your dashboard reads 2.388 million, which ties here. And our expenses come in at 2.556 million, which tie, where are we at? I think we need to scroll down just a tad. Here we go. 2.566 million, with our net loss as of the month of January to be negative 168,000. And then just to the right, this is our projected for year end. You can see our net loss projection at negative 309,000, which ties to our forecast as of January 31st, 309,000. So really, it's just us transferring the data.
Okay, can you in the app, where are the balance sheets items here in regards to liabilities and reserves for liabilities and all of that? Where would we find that on the app?
Okay, on this application, keep scrolling. This is the meat of your income statement. Keep scrolling.
Looking for liabilities.
Yes, I'm looking for liabilities, especially for.
Keep scrolling. So the balance sheet, I believe, is just your forecasted as of June 30th for year end, not as of January. Keep scrolling. Oh. Keep going. I didn't see it. might be easier.
Anyway,
It's in here somewhere.
in LAUSD is looking at this, they're looking at,
What LAUSD looks at this, well, during our oversight visits, they come with a printout that shows your preliminary budget, your first interim numbers that were submitted, second interim numbers that were submitted, and your unaudited actual numbers that are submitted. And what they're looking at is fluctuations between the different reporting periods, and they look for school leadership to provide an explanation as to why there was a change.
right?
Usually those changes are tied directly to movements in enrollment and average daily attendance, because that's what plays such a big, impact in the school's operations. But then they're also looking for explanations around any, one-time expenses. A one-time expense could be, as an example, an over-allocation bill that you
Yeah,
get.
that's why I'm asking, it's like, that's why I'm asking, is where are the incurred but not reported liabilities on our, incurred but not reported liabilities, potential reserve building, right? I mean, where would we capture that dollar amount? Because ultimately, based on prudent, and help me out there, if liabilities are made available, you need to reserve them at one point in time, right? Where would we capture those?
Do like MD&A like notes in the model. We can make a note if there's a space for it, but like we discussed generally with gap accounting, if there's less than a 50% probability, you don't actually have to put it in the numbers, and you don't have to put it on the balance sheet. So since we have no idea how much and where the chances are that we have to pay it, it's not necessary to financially accrue it on there, but you can notate it if there are notes there.
So just so I'm clear, Frank, you're asking to report that potential over-allocation penalty in this report to LAUSD?
No, I think we know, now that the over-allocation penalty came out, and it was mandated, shouldn't they have?
Should we put that in there?
No, I think also isn't the obligation of LAUSD to make sure that the schools are accounting for it? And by lack of not accounting for it, by not pointing it out in their oversight visit, did they
That's interesting.
It is
Are we
interesting.
supposed to note their legal disputes?
I don't know. I don't know if that's a question for me or something.
No, it's not a question for you, it's a
Yeah, but
question.
I think it's a good
You see where I'm
discussion.
going with that,
Yeah.
you see where I'm going with
No,
that,
I
because,
get it.
you have the obligation,
Let's
to
explore
point
that
out,
further.
you have an obligation to point out that there are potential liability as an oversight.
Yeah, I mean,
And it's just the left hand talking to us, whether the right hand wants to have money from us. The left hand is saying it's auditing ours. So the same entity is auditing us and is demanding money. So I mean, we could just go but where would we just capture that?
Well, you would capture it in the
In the
liabilities,
notes.
and as a note, and is, as Joe said, it's the likelihood it's greater than 50%, or any justification. I don't think you need a 50%. You can say, we're just accounting for this in case, and that'll totally skew this.
yeah, I mean, this year, if it's not resolved by year end, however, you get some sort of idea as to how much it could potentially be. You could possibly note it as a subsequent event for next year if you're not going to book it this year, or
But we have audited financials, right?
yeah.
We're a California corporation, just nonprofit it happens to be. we are subject to GAP standards as a consequence. We submit the audits, right? To
Yeah,
LAUSD.
we submit to LAUSD and also to the state and other agencies. I think the only agency that's interested or thinking about this is LAUSD. I think you're right that if they're preparing, oversight on us and reviewing our financials, and if they want to go back X number of years to collect, shame on them for not pointing it out last year, the year prior, and the year before that. But I think that's the whole argument that most of the schools in LAUSD are trying to make at this point in time.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's just-
I agree with you.
I think we should table that.
Yeah, but
Let's follow, yeah,
food
definitely.
for thought, but you know.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. Okay. Any other questions about the second interim report?
Just so you know, it's due to submit on March 2nd, so we're actually complete with it, it's ready to go. But, you know, just letting you know, the due date's March 2nd.
All right, all in favor to approve the second interim report?
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving on to the 2019-2020 winter consolidated application.
It's easy. Yeah, this one's super easy. It's a one pager that I've also handed out to you just now. So the winter consolidated application, this is our point in time to report out on any carryover of federal funds and any unspent balances of federal funds that we had applied for previously and not yet spent or fully spent, and they want to know about it. You guys have not been applying for federal funds. So the only report that you have to submit to them right now is whether or not you'd like to consolidate the funds that you're not receiving. So the answer is no to all of those. We're not consolidating the $0 that we applied for and received for each of these categories. Looking forward, in the spring application, that's when you apply for dollars and also report certain certifications like the protected prayer certification, your homeless policy, things like that. And that's when you also have the opportunity to apply for different funding, like Title II, which is to enhance teacher quality, Title I, which is to support intervention efforts. All of this is tied to student data around free and reduced price meals. And historically, because this school had very low percentages of that population, the school had not been applying for those funds. And I think,
Can I interject that, I shared at the finance committee that, Title I, we are not we're not going to be eligible for, but we do want to explore Title II funding, and we do want to explore Title IV funding. And so when it comes to the spring application and looking ahead to next year, instead of in the future, a year from now, we won't be looking at all those, we will likely be applying for those two areas.
so the finance committee is exploring applying for some of these categories. As Dr. Jones said, Title I isn't one of the categories that we have discussed. I haven't spoken to him since the last meeting, but I was very curious to know what a similar school in this area was doing, so I looked at Ocean Charter School, and they're actually receiving a small amount of Title I. So it's helpful, and I think that we can discuss potentially maybe, I don't know, but I just wanted to share that piece of information with you, that while they have a similar demographic, they actually are requesting those funds, and it's not a huge amount, but we may want to discuss it further. But Dr. Jones actually brought all of this up on his own, saying that he would like to go after these dollars because he thinks that it's worthwhile. So just wanted to let you
No,
know.
we agree. He's mentioned it on several occasions, and we agree with her.
Okay.
All right.
And this also doesn't require board approval. I just always brought it to you as an FYI and as a best practice. And we put it on as an action item just to show that you guys are really, on top of all of your reports that go to different agencies.
Okay.
So we don't need to take action on this one?
We have it as an action
We
item.
always
I'm just saying that it's a best practice to do it as an action.
Make a motion.
Yeah, we did it the wrong way.
Yeah.
I make a motion.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Moving on to the approval of the investment policy. Is there a motion?
I move.
A second.
We need a second to discuss it.
Let's hear you with a second.
I second. Or yeah. Frank, do you wanna?
Yeah, this is the background of this is we need an investment policy to invest funds into certain classes of assets. The basic document is, Ryan has provided us 2 documents. With Joe and I, 2 documents which we have discussed as a finance committee. And then Joe and I, Joe reviewed first, and then I did. The basic concept of this is that we can present it today and we don't have to vote on it, right? So if not everybody has read it, so, but I just.
No, I have.
Okay. Ryan? So we're basically separating our funds into operating. Can you scroll up one more time? Yeah, no worries. We have it's basically a definition of operating funds and reserve funds.
Mm-hmm.
Operating funds can only be, there's a goal what the operating fund should do. Operating funds can only be invested into interest-bearing savings accounts and in interest-bearing checking accounts. Reserve funds, which are expected go beyond what is necessary for the cash flow of the school through the year, can be invested in fixed income securities only. And here, U.S. government and agency securities is a minimum rating of minimum AA rating, money market funds, and certificates of deposits. Because we want to do it, there's no speculation going on there. It's just fixed income. It's the safest security we could find. Just not that we have $100,000 sitting somewhere and then we're actually losing money of it because it's sitting there. So the safest, and this is just in regards to the reserve funds. The finance committee is instrumental in providing a selection of, so to speak, investment managers, which would be Morgan Stanley, that kind. The board has the final authority to pick one. The board controls it. The finance committee is not getting involved in making investment decisions. We're not getting involved out of fiduciary responsibility, right? So it's a completely outsourced.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
So what kind of, the reserves, what vessel is it in right now? Is it just a regular savings account?
Regular savings account.
It's in a regular savings account, and it's in a Morgan Stanley account, $100,000, which have been sitting there for a while, and it has been because the fees of the account have been actually diminishing.
Yeah,
right.
that's fine. Okay. Why not? Have you guys considered like municipal bonds?
That's under government
Okay,
agency.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. And when you talk about an investment manager, Morgan Stanley, do we have I imagine once we approve this, then we'll get a few proposals from a few.
Yeah, always just for the sake of it, we leave it with Morgan Stanley for this year and just go for this year and invest it, and then do a full RFP on the stuff once it is all invested and settled. And we do it then the next year.
Do we know what the fees are from Morgan Stanley?
We had $100,000 in there. It's now what, 99,000 and a little bit.
Yeah, as of today, I'm sure.
No, it's just literally sitting there in cash. I know.
Yeah.
I don't care. Yeah.
I think there's $500
a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a savings account. That's basically a savings account.
But it's not earning any interest.
It's not earning any interest. So I guess what I'm saying is Frank is suggesting keep it in the Morgan Stanley account, that same account, for the rest of this year.
And then
next year, I would say why. I think at the next board meeting we get a proposal from,
I think it's distracting for the administration now to run this.
Well, the administrator and the finance committee can. That's just money that we're not earning.
No, I think we can use the Morgan Stanley account. Just go there and say, this is what you can do with
Morgan Stanley has a money market account that could switch into, right?
Well, they have.
Yeah,
they can do
responsible.
AAA federal treasury bonds, whatever. According to
If that's all I'm saying. If that's the venue, then that's absolutely fine. I just don't want it to sit there for 6 months. until we
No.
decide to do
I just
something.
want to use the Morgan Stanley account, and then we can do for RFP for like, okay, here's $100,000 in a bank account, what other bank manager, what other asset managers are out there, and then we can go and get 3 proposals and benchmark it.
Sure,
So right
and
now,
that's
I just use the Morgan Stanley.
But someone has to, you know,
Yeah,
transfer those
administration is in
accounts.
charge.
Okay.
Just go to them and just say, this is what you can do, give me a proposal. And we'll sign off on the assets.
We would probably bring it back to a board meeting
Yeah.
in the short term, just immediately move it into the money market, so we can at least carry some interest on it as quickly as possible.
We'll explore with that. So is your intention that at the next board meeting that account already be up and running? Or
The
that we would
account
have
is
it
up
ready
and
to, well, I'm saying like that move.
The move, I would say, before the next board meeting, that those funds move into a money market account. And at the next board meeting, a proposal is made to say, this is what Morgan Stanley is, these are their fees, and this is how we're gonna
Invest
split it.
the-
And the reason why I asked that question
Yeah.
is for the minutes, so that it's
So
clear.
it's clear,
That-
exactly.
that, you know, so the LAUSD can't come and say, well, you talked about an investment policy,
But the
now all
board
of a
didn't
sudden
approve
it's.
it, right, got it.
Okay.
Yep.
So,
So, I think we approve,
we can make
we
it.
approve the policy, and then can we move it into a money market account without voting on it?
Yeah, I believe so, because your Morgan Stanley account has that capability.
Perfect.
So
And it
it's
was
still
approved
within your
before.
Morgan Stanley account, it's just, you know, allocated
Shifted.
into that
Shifted.
different
Perfect.
investment tool within your already existing account.
And then at the next board meeting, we can approve,
Whatever the
whatever the
allocation
allocation is for
Yeah.
Yeah.
the bonds, all junk bonds. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
You got them? Just because it was complicated.
Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
We missed you. So next is, no. Don't see it. Board Development Committee. C or C. You want to put up there?
What's that?
The Board Development Committee charter?
I have no,
I don't think I have.
Joe?
So that was, it was not in the
No,
box.
I didn't have a even folder for it.
Oh.
So this was just a discussion about what.
Ah, got it. Yep.
We
Okay.
didn't even have a folder for it.
Okay.
Even did it on.
Yes, discussion, but we should have given out the charter. That's all right, don't worry. I'll open it again. All right, we are ready. Go ahead, please. You know what, let me just give a little bit of background. So this is the charter that was approved by the board last year for the board development committee. So we would like to talk about this charter and a few changes that we most likely need to make. For example, it is called the governance committee, which does not line up with our charter. It should be called the board development committee because that's what the charter stipulates. The committee is responsible for coordinating trainings for the board, onboarding and orientation, either writing out the process and or identifying the people responsible for the onboarding and orientation, planning an annual retreat, continuing education. Also, board development and evaluation. As you know, in our calendar we have self-evaluation that we will complete in June, and that will be one of the objectives for the committee to work on. Engagement, our engagement with ourselves, with our community and our stakeholders, and continuing evaluation structure. Policies and practices, I think we've instituted several, including our code of conduct and meeting protocols. We've actually done a lot of governing documents, many created, but the board development committee would actually review those and determine additional ones if necessary. And then strategic goals for the board. So those are the overarching goals of the committee. The membership structure as approved last year was 2 trustees, a parent, an administrative team member, and a faculty member, educator, so a total of 5 members. So that is sort of the generic outline. I would like to open it up to discussion. Frank?
Is this group of
Tracking composition, so membership?
composition
Okay.
is making is vetting, is searching, is vetting for candidates for the board?
According to our original charter, board composition, evaluating the strategic composition of the board, review the size and the makeup, and then identifying and providing recommendations to the board for board composition and new board trustees, exactly, yes.
Yeah,
So it's doing both, it's taking our makeup.
If I could just
Yeah.
ask a question, is this where, like, for instance, the comment that was made in public comment earlier about looking for non-parent members of the board, especially as we have a heavy majority right now, 4, 2 that are voted in, 2 that are not, that are on the board. Would this be like where you put language in to make that
Sort of
a
a
consideration? I don't know if you want to mandate it, because I don't think you want to constrain yourself, but I think it's certainly making that a strong consideration of the board. Is this where you would see that?
I think I would exactly. I would probably make that more clear under the composition, board composition.
So our thinking is right now, we're talking about this. This is a discussion item, not an action item. But
Like what would be changed to this document?
Putting forward for an action item, we want to get opinion on this of what we need to suggest.
So I think, this is a critical committee, because, if hijacked, it could change, it could change direction of the school by changing the composition of the board quite significantly. I think we need safeguards in there to make sure in some shape or form, right? I mean, development is good, but radical change could be disturbing to the greater community. I think, for example, parent, so the bylaws of a nonprofit in Germany would, for example, dictate, dictate that voting board members also have to be a part of a club, part of an organization for a certain period of time. Parent representatives voted on the board should be at least at school for 12 months.
Exactly.
Something like that, so that
Sure,
you
consistency.
so you have consistency in safeguarding, the overall direction. I mean, because you always have to move, and if everything goes well, you just amend the strategic course of the school, right? But ultimately, you want to get consistency and maybe some safeguards in there that the governance committee or the development committee is developing safeguards for consistency. It doesn't need to be in that document, but it should be considered.
Can you explain more about your concern, because I think all board members have to vote to approve a board member, so that's not enough of a safeguard, you're worried about.
Yep.
May I?
Yeah, sure, absolutely, I don't need to.
Yeah, maybe Frank is saying that this committee, you know, nominates 3 people who, you know, lean, you know, are compositionally might be totally new to the school, new to the environment, new, you know what I mean? And those are the only choices they're bringing forward. And what that would ultimately mean is the board would not approve any of the candidates, and it's just a wasted
Well,
time.
we have had the in the past.
Sorry, is that right? Did I get?
Yeah, you know, I think this was just an example, right? We have had, the board usually had, you know, whatever, because we were so desperate for board candidates, right? We have just voted.
Take any old schmuck.
You know, and then, you know, we paid dearly at the end of it, right? Because we had like a you know, split board, and it happens to all organizations, right? So I'm just like, this is the committee who is making the recommendations to the board, who's finding the candidates, you know, and then making the recommendations. So just like, you know, we just need to have like a framework of what we want the committee to do, you know, ultimately the board, to bring forward candidates, you know, what's in the, so that should be part of that committee.
So this committee though is run by, I would imagine that you're on this committee and that there's a board member running the committee.
2 board members.
2 board members running the
But
committee.
there's the chair, just a board member.
I'm sorry?
The chair would be a board member,
Correct.
and 2 board members, in
addition.
addition.
And I believe Danielle was on.
No, because I thought it was 2 board members.
So
and-
board members
Parent
total,
member
one is the chair.
Last year.
That's right.
Was she a parent member maybe last year?
Yes.
Yeah, last,
Yeah.
Yes, she was, yeah.
And Beacon, just to remind you, this is a subcommittee of the board, so while it's a Brown Act committee, it cannot take any action. It just makes recommendations to the board of trustees.
But the recommendations are critical, right? Because they, you know, because what do you do as a board member? The committee worked to find board members, other things. What is your, I mean, you're free in your decision, in your individual decision on voting on and off, but, you know, sometimes you just feel obligated by the board governance committee to just don't disrespect their work they've been putting in there by voting against it. And then you're unbeknownst, you're just trusting your gut and your gut may be wrong or right. So, I think it's a critical composition in order to make sure that there is diversity yet of opinion and of other things on the board, but also consistency and, you know, mindset and style, you know, in a sense of like, oh,
so if
no
I-
takeovers.
If I may, I think the key word is safeguards, right? So I think part of what this committee can do, and again, Chris, this is for you because you can modify this document, we can vote on it next time, is to present to the board recommendations for composition. To say these are the areas that we feel the board, you know, that there needs to be new board members with these kinds of backgrounds, potentially. And again, procedurally take one part of it at a time. So first thing is composition, potentially. Then it's I guess you can say experience, or you know what kind of experience the committee would come back to us and say, look, since these are not parent board members, you know.
Also maybe some disclosures if you have any, you know, what's your relationship with any of the board members you're on, you're just board with. Are you completely new? Do you have a
Who referred you?
who referred
yeah.
you, and you know, but you know, like, are you a friend of Frank's, and will you always be voting along Frank's line? You know what I'm trying to say, and so just disclosure.
I think yeah. So I think maybe some language that talks about more disclosure, more transparency, But I think that doesn't necessarily have to be in charter, that can be in sort of when they, we give them the mandate on the
Yeah.
composition and we say these are the things that we're going to
Just maybe elaborate on some of the elements what the boards what the governance committee is doing. It's just like you can reframe, you can just within that framework refine it and live it. But be mindful of these incidents we had in the past.
So safeguards.
Yeah.
And then also, as Frank mentioned, I think it would be prudent to have, as we first this, we were talking about the committee, right? The charter for the committee, but something that the committee would most likely present to the board is saying prospective board members should attend at least 3 board meetings. You know what I mean? Prospective board members should, meet the officers, or something of that sort as their part of the responsibility.
And
But not
But
here.
is that, but that's not, are you talking about but not talking about parent elections? You're talking about the non-parent election.
I think the charter should be much more, it should be organized more towards the word I'm going to use, safeguards and process, and coming to the board for clarification on those processes.
I agree with process work with you, for example. So in your decision, how would the committee, what is the ranking system of how you pick one for a candidate?
Right, but that wouldn't be in the charter, that
No.
would be when they come back.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
develop safeguards.
And they would have another thing that, as far as board composition, they would make recommendations. That kind of stuff.
All I want is that all I want to make sure is that this committee is not going to get hijacked.
So safeguards,
Yeah.
anything else before it could, because I think
Yeah.
that gives the.
Yeah.
But I think to Beacon's point, Frank, ultimately, it is an advisory committee, and
Yeah.
Okay. Enough to go on, thank you.
all right, Chris, academic calendar.
This should be it's fairly simple. This is
I moved,
the
but
LAUSD
I'm
academic
making-
calendar that
Approve
was.
the academic, sorry, Chris, excuse me. Approval of the 2020-2021 academic calendar. Is there a motion?
I moved.
I second. Go ahead.
So yeah, this is the LAUSD calendar. We are not deviating from it. Apparently that has been done at some points in years past. It has not gone well. I think it goes much better if we do stay in lockstep with this calendar, and that's what it is. We got that for you.
Why has it not gone well?
When we have different days and service and custodial and all the different pieces that can go wrong, do go wrong.
Can I just add, if I take my son's birthday and make that a holiday, can I get you guys to vote on me for that? I'll be the
That
same
would be a
for
personal interest.
I'll do the same thing for you guys.
You can put it.
Safeguards.
Safeguards. Thank you, Beacon.
He's asked me on several
Glad you're
occasions.
here.
Like, go to all these board meetings, what do I get out of it?
Okay.
Fine. Alright. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Alright, Chris, approval of the integrated safe school plan.
And once again,
Motion.
Oh, sorry, is there a motion? For the approval of the integrated safe school plan?
Second.
I didn't move. I second.
Perfect. Deacon makes the motion, Frank seconds. Alright.
so very quickly, we want to be sure that we are covering all aspects. This is approved at the LAUSD level because this is the safe school plan developed by Bradenwood Middle School. That's what we're approving. We also want to share with the board all the pieces that we do as the administrative team. Scott Casey, in particular, on these. Scott did great leadership with this. Coordinating with our co-located school and making sure that all the pieces are there. But in terms of approval by March 1st each year, that is a requirement. And in the future, I think we'll bring this to you in November. That's about the time where everything gets solidified, and we shouldn't be in any rush for that. But just in the future, we'll do that. This is the plan approved for this campus through 5 it and cover it this way.
Did you make changes to it, or was it just, it's just the same? Did you look at them? Did you?
Yes, we reviewed them, and we lived them, but no, I do not recommend any changes.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we've tabled the board development. Calendar topics for next board meeting.
Can you bring up your plan?
I'm sorry?
No, he has a plan there, you know, where you mapped out the year at the
We
beginning.
definitely need to determine what day we're going to add a regular board meeting in June. So that we need to
Yeah,
get
okay.
a date on the calendar today. And I'm gonna recommend that we just do it on a Monday and do 2 Mondays in a row. The reason why we need to do this in June is because of new requirements with regard to LCAP, where you must do a public hearing and then both will be on a regular scheduled meeting. So we have one regular meeting already scheduled in June, which is, what's the date of that? And so, a week later would be 22nd. So if we could put that on the calendar.
22nd of March.
This is June.
June.
Listen, let me double check.
So correct, that's
No, they can go either way. It can be
We have to have a second.
it just has to be a
board
regular
members
meeting.
today.
So we do the public hearing at the,
She asked for a public hearing on June 10th
this was from
Anjanette.
Anjanette.
So she asked for the public hearing to be earlier than the meeting that we set now.
We're closing school when?
Is there any reason you can't?
June 12th.
Is there any reason she said that you can't do the public hearing at the regular meeting that we have where we do other events? And then,
I don't think that there's a reason, just her request may be due to, scheduling of other schools already, because she has a lot of other stuff.
so if she made
So
that
she needs to
specific
attend?
request, then I would.
No, she doesn't need to attend, but she needs to have the document ready for you to look at it. So she is basically scheduling her whole, next 2-3 months.
She met
All,
something.
yes, all the LCAPs that she's doing for other schools and stuff.
What is our last day of school?
The 12th,
12.
Friday the 12th. And that Monday is the 8th.
So the public hearing.
Fine, is it just? Do we have an idea what a public hearing looks like on the matter? Do we need to circulate this stuff for it?
It's just, we just need to have the information out there, 72 hours in advance. Be sure that we're, have a chance for the public to speak.
Okay.
And it will probably be, a single item we'll be speaking here, but we're looking to be sure we establish.
Well, you never know. Yeah, okay. I'm fine.
So the 10th, it's a Wednesday?
Well, that was just around that time frame if you wanna stick with Mondays, because we will all have Mondays kind of.
Mondays
so
cleared.
from board meetings, then I'm sure she's fine with the 8th, so it was just the guideline.
I'm good with the 8th.
6 p.m. on the 8th?
Yep,
Okay, and it will be scheduled as a regular board meeting.
yeah. Single item.
Likely.
Anything else? I just just have one thing, and this is not necessarily, may not go on the agenda. I'm gonna take a picture of all of us at the next board meeting. Sure. So we can make it an agenda item.
Just send me a photo of these phones.
And everyone knows that our gala is in March.
March 21st.
Everyone is highly encouraged to attend. I've been asked to give that message to you.
Yes, we hope to have
Safeguards.
100% of our board there.
Yeah, sure. Definitely.
And dressed accordingly.
What is the?
Do you have a fedora?
No.
Havana Nights.
All right. At this time, the board will now convene to close session.
Can we turn
Do
this
it in here? Or
Yeah, I think it'd be easier if we just do it in here and,
we pause the recording?
Can we turn
Maggie, would you be able to join us for a closed session?
please, Where'd you like me?
Let's turn up the camera first there.
Yes.
That camera makes me feel so
No, it's like here, we're down here, Scott's face,
Yeah.
Chris's camera, and the microphone.
What is this?
This is Chris's assessment.
Oh, we're not talking this up.
After meeting minutes.
Does the board anticipate anything interesting?
This one's been
to
off for the
report?
whole time.
Oh,
It's
all
off.
the time.
The bed's off.
Should I be waiting?
Here. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, it's all.
That makes They say my smart TV is off. I'm not sure it ever is, so.
It's not. You're listening on your phone right now, Chris.
Yeah. I'll go through it in more detail, but just so you know it. Okay, those are the actual response documents, and we've done some in the frame. But they're all consolidated in here.
So if we could begin with proper discussion. So this is Jason Rudolph. And,
Hey.
we became fast friends down at Beaudry. The issues conference where we had a chance to meet ahead of time and then spend some good quality time. Yeah, absolutely. With your lawyers.
Yeah, I'll just give you guys a brief background on myself. Jason Rudolph, Young Million Corps, represent the school. Our firm represents the school in a number of matters related to this over-allocation and property denial related matters. How I come to this work. I spent a number of years working in-house
No, I'm okay.
for a charter management organization here in Los Angeles that runs 8 public schools
Is it open?
It's in there, but
Will you grab my, do you know where my keys are?
which one
It's
is
the
it?
first big one. Thank you. Smacked my thigh with it. Oh God. That is
It was supposed to be a short one.
they're just the most dysfunctional school board I've ever worked with.
And they pick on weird things, like, you're gonna go based off of Galileo's test.
They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's
If it was,
glaring.
I get Pete's questions.
Yeah.
But
Frank always
the
asks
only one
that
who
question
kinda
every
knows.
time, and I always just skirt the answer, because, yeah, more resources would be great. We don't have
Yeah.
money for that, so I don't know.
well, that's why I hope you didn't mind. I got in there on the, look, IAs.
It's not the IA.
It's
That's not the reason
that
though. It's
drop
because they had a
is
teacher
because
in
it's
first
because of
grade.
last year. That's what second grade.
Oh.
why-
FYI, I think I've made a mental decision that I'm gonna stay in 1A, 1B next year. If that,
If that's we're doing, staff intent and preference sheets
okay.
soon, so write
Okay.
that down. Start.
You like your system that you've got?
I like my system I've got
Yeah.
going. I really just don't want to move classrooms.
Yeah, wanna be.
I really just don't want to move classrooms.
Yeah.
That's my number one.
What if that classroom become?
If that classroom became something else, I would probably teach whatever is in there. I just don't want to move classrooms. Yeah, and then Gerlinde and I work fine enough together.
Yeah, they seem like a nice.
She's got a system, I've got a system.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine with that, so. But yeah, I was talking to Ildiko and stuff like that today, and I just kind of said, you know, there's always enough things going on at the school, let's just stay stable.
And you've done so much bouncing around.
I don't even think
Yeah.
I'm not gonna bring my computer home.
Don't, just leave it. It's
I have to
coming.
work on this
I don't
lost
mind.
report
Yeah.
I don't
of
mind
the
bouncing.
of the report.
I know, but it's nice to have, to be, not have.
Quite honestly, this is my third year of top first grade.
Oh, that's nice.
Thank you.